We are currently in Orach Chaim 158, Kuf Nun Ches 158, talking about the laws of washing the hands. We have been discussing the requirements that bring you to hand washing, meaning when you want to sit and eat bread. That's what some of these requirements are referring to. So we've gone over that you need to be saying hamotzi. You should be eating at least a kazai or some more. We talked about what happens if the bread is in a case where it's considered a tafel, where it's considered a secondary thing, like you have a sharp drink. Okay, so we've learned a whole bunch of these interesting things. And we also talked about what's considered a liquid. Okay, and that washing for fruits is not cool. All right, so there we go. Now we're going to continue with Sif Vav, with halacha number 6. And in here, we're going to be talking about drink. So we talked about eating. Now let's talk for a second about drinking. If one was going to drink, one need not wash their hands. They don't even have to wash a single one. And then the Ramah says, look later on in Siman Kuf Ayin, which is 170. Okay? So what's going on? Why we have thought that if you take a drink, you need to go ahead and wash your hands. So the Mishna Berurah explains. So we talked about touching liquids, and those liquids transfer tumah. So in a case of where you're just drinking, we're not concerned that you're just going to stick your finger in the liquid. Okay? And so therefore we didn't require, or the rabbis didn't require you to wash your hands. So even if it should happen that you were washing your hands and you're having a drink, okay? Or let's say you stick your hands in the river, right, to give yourself a drink, which, or you take one of those life straws. And he's not saying that. He says you stick your hands in the river, right? You shouldn't do that because, you get sick. You need to actually filter the water. Let's say you did back in the day, before they really understood this whole germ theory thing. So if you were drinking from the river and you stuck your hands in it, you still don't have to wash your hands, right? That's what we're saying over here. That's the big chiddush. Okay, going on to halacha zayin. Number 7. You are washing your hands or something that's going to get dipped into a liquid. Okay? So we already said before that if you're dipping is a requirement. Excuse me. Dipping is a requirement for washing. Okay, so even just to sit and just eat foods isn't a requirement for washing. We did mention that sticking a food into a liquid, because if I touch the liquid, is considered a reason to cause you to wash. So there are those who say, or from whom it appears that they would say, that if you're going to then eat bread afterwards, that the washing your hands for dipping is not equivalent to washing your hands for bread. Okay, and therefore you can't wash and then hold off until you want to go ahead and eat some bread. Okay, and even more so, it need not even be expressed that if you washed your hands and then decided to eat bread afterwards, that definitely doesn't count. So we're saying two things: that in a situation where you were required to wash your hands, there are those who say that wouldn't count. So you can't be careful around your veggies that you're dipping. So that's one thing. Now, the Ramah says if you did not take your mind off of your hands, then you wash your hands again without saying a bracha. And if you touch some place in the midst of your eating and a place in your body that's kind of a yucky place, then you definitely have to wash your hands again. And look at the rules that we bring later on in Siman 164. Okay? And in that situation, we say that you have to go ahead and wash your hands again and make a bracha. So let's talk about this. So the Mishna Berurah says that you wash your hands the Mishna Berurah is explaining when the Ramah says that you should wash your hands a second time. Okay? Oh no, wait. Now, which one is this going on? Okay, so if you wash your hands once, okay, and now you're gonna wash, and now you want to go ahead and eat bread. Okay, so you're gonna have to. So the Ramah says you need to wash your hands a second time, and the Shulchan Aruch seems to imply that you have to wash your hands again. And why? He says because if you only wash your hands one time and say a bracha, okay. So for example, let's say, 1 second. Oh, I'm sorry. 1 second. It's the. I don't know why it's doing that. Looking at the wrong one. All right. Okay, so here we go. Now I have the right Mishna Berurah pulled up. This Safari, I've told you guys before that I use Safaria so it's easier for me to read while giving the shir, and sometimes it brings up the wrong Mishna Berurah. So it's talking about washing your hands. It brought up the Mishna Berurah from like at the beginning of the Siman. It's like, this is not the right one. So if you are washing your hands and want to eat bread, okay. So there are some poskim who say that there's no obligation to wash your hands when you are dipping food into a liquid nowadays, okay? So he had said that earlier, all right? So if you look back at Os Chaf, okay, which is Mishna Berurah selection number 20, and there's no obligation to wash your hands nowadays, only on bread, but not on other foods. In fact, we said that might look a little bit haughty to wash your hands for other foods. And so if that's the case, washing for this isn't going to count for that because you don't have to be so strict about it. Okay, so you only can count the washing if it's of the same level and thought processes as washing your hands for bread. Okay, now let's say you were washing your hands and you weren't looking to eat. Okay, now let's say you had dirty hands. Okay, and you just want to wash them with soap and water, and then add the Negelwasser on at the end to wash your hands. Okay, and you weren't going to eat bread at that time, and then you go, you know what? I'm going to eat bread. And it wasn't so long in between the time when you cleaned your hands and dried your hands and decided, I'm going to have a sandwich. So this washing doesn't count, because you had no intent to wash your hands for the sake of the holiness needed to go ahead and wash your hands for bread. Okay? Now, the Ramah, when he says, if you didn't take your mind off of it, so he's talking about everything the Shulchan Aruch has said. So, meaning, you didn't take your mind off of washing your hands to dip your vegetables into a dip. Okay? Or you were talking, or if you just washed your hands without having in mind to eat bread. Okay? He's saying that if you did not ever have a break, then you could go ahead and wash your hands again without saying a bracha. Because everybody agrees, according to Mishna Berurah explains, that if you're not watching what your hands are doing, they probably go down your shirt and then down here and up the leg, and right, you're gonna touch all the cover parts of your body. Or they're gonna scratch your head, or they'll scratch someone else's head, or they'll touch the dirt. Right, hands go all over the place. Okay, and so therefore the idea here is that your hands are clean. You don't have to say the bracha on them because they're already considered clean. But if you're not paying attention, then you would definitely have to say a bracha on them. Why? And why is it you wouldn't say a bracha? Because the post can go the other way, that if you wash your hands, so we said that washing your hands was for preserving the holiness of truma. Don't get your hands wet and then touch the truma and make the truma tameh with all your tumaness. So if you wash your hands even to eat regular foods, and you had no intent to wash your hands for truma, and so for much more, so in this case, when you didn't wash your hands for the bread, if you didn't take your mind off your hands from the moment you wash them, that seems like it could work. Now, this discussion isn't actually brought in our chapter. It's actually brought in the next chapter, and it's discussed there and brought down in Siman Yud Gimel. Okay? And so, therefore, if you wash your hands with a bracha, you might and it was a good wash, you might have fulfilled the obligation. Tumanis is a very serious, right? The tumanis, right? It's not, or as many people are wont to say, it's not a tuma. It's not a tuma. And you have to wash your hands with a bracha because the first hand washing could count for that. Okay, so that's part of the issue. So what we're basically saying over here is that you really, if you didn't do a serious washing, it doesn't count. If you did a serious washing, then you're going to have to probably say, you have to wash again and not say a bracha. Okay, and then the Rama finishes that if you did touch covered parts, that of course you have to wash again, because the Mishna Berurah explains over here, because same thing, if you're going to dip something in, in the other stuff, you have to also wash your hands, because that's the same thing. The question is whether or not you can go from a lower level to the higher level. Can I go from dipping foods to eating bread? So what we seem to say is that you would have to wash your hands again without saying a bracha. Now, is that always the case, right? So that is something to think about. Well, if you wash your hands for shachris, okay? So in that situation, you're going to make a bracha on it, and you wash your hands the whole time. Then you should, like after shachris, then you should probably wash your hands again. Without a bracha, because I already said the bracha. Now, if you wash them with the same fervor that you would have washed your hands, and in fact, you often add more water than you would for your hands, you may not even have to wash your hands again if you eat immediately after shachris. So, if you can watch what your hands are doing, and you see what they're doing, like they're just touching here, and they're not going in and around, and all that type of stuff. So then you might be able to do that. Okay, let's go on to the next halacha over here. All right, so now we're on halacha ches. Let's say you were in the desert. Why? Because no water. Or you're in a dangerous place. Again, no water. Right? So then you don't have to wash your hands. Plus, mate. Mishna Berurah explains. So these cases are very dangerous. And if you're going to start looking for water, especially in places where there is no water, right? So there's a place that it has to be dangerous. So you don't have to take that stringency on. Just eat your food and go on your journey. Okay? However, normally we said this earlier, that you have to go back a full meal, right? 1 mile would be how far back you'd have to go. It should be like an 18-minute walk. In a dangerous place, you don't have to do that. Only in places where people live and it's safe to travel. Okay. However, the Mishna Berurah explains that you do have to wrap your hands in some type of glove or a wrap. Okay. So if you put a shmata around your sandwich, right? So you take like here. So you take like this is my glasses wipey thing. So you take that and you put it underneath, and here's your sandwich, right? Here's a glasses case, and you put it around like this. You would eat the sandwich like that, okay, or like that. So that's how you would eat the bread. It was holding it in the shmata. What's this? No use of rubbing your hands in the sand in the desert. Oh, good question. Okay, so in the case of cleaning your hands, there's a distinction between cleaning your hands for brachos, meaning that your hands shouldn't be dirty when you're going to engage in prayer or saying blessings. However, if you are going to do that, cleaning your hands with sand would be fine. But you need the water to remove tuma, this rabbinic tuma. Okay. All right, and why? But we warn after this halacha 9. Everyone should be cautious with washing the hands. Why? Because all those who are careless in washing the hands should be punted from the community, right? And then they'll invalidate anius, and they come to poverty, and are drawn up from the world. So there's no Mishna Berurah on this. So this is a Gemara from Sota, and the Kaf HaChaim says the following. He says that basically the pshat is in this Gemara is that that you eat without washing your hands on a regular basis, because you are violating the words of the rabbis, and because in the Gemara, there's a Gemara in Shabbos that says that as well. So the Gemara in Shabbos on page Samach Beis 62, that part of the punishment is that you come to poverty. Okay, so Tosfos points out over there that you get two punishments. You get the violating the words of the rabbis, and then you also, since you think you're being smart, you also come to poverty. Okay, so that's some of the comments of the Kaf HaChaim on this. Okay, so and there's a lot to say on why not to mezalzel on it. The Mishna Berurah is rather quiet. Let's go to halacha 10. Okay. Revius. What is a revius? Okay, so halacha 10. Afal bisha shiram berevius. Even though we said that you have to pour a revius of water, right? We said this right at the very beginning. Okay, so one revius means it's 1/4 of the measurement known of a log, and a log is a measurement of 1 1/2 eggs. Okay, so if you take a medium-sized egg, right, you boil it, you plop that there, and then you have another half of it next to it. So visualize that. That's the volume of water that you need. How we say, however, Yosef litol b'shefa. You should actually wash your hands with more water. That's why I mentioned at a possible scenario about washing your hands at Shachris. Why? Because in the Gemara, Rav Chisda used to say, "Ana mishai malei chafnai maya v'yahavli malei chafnei tuvusa." I wash my hands with a full bucket of water, and I have all of goodness of filling my hands at all times. Okay, so it's a blessing to wash your hands with lots of water. Mishna Berurah explains, we're talking about washing both hands with one revius, okay? And that's going to be explained in greater detail in Siman 162.4, all right? And that's where we talk about that one should not do less than one revius per hand, okay? So that if you do less than that, there's lots of things that you have to worry about, like where did the water go, how does it flip, and really, the truth is that even though we say over here you only need a revius for both hands, you need a revius for each hand, okay? So that's good. And he talks about that's more water is more blessing. So, however, the Mishna Berurah says that the best way to do it is to have more so that you don't have to go ahead and have somebody else go and fill up more for you, or not also to say like I'm washing my hands that I receive blessings from above. Okay, you do it for the honor to wash your hands each meal before Hashem, and that's good. Okay, and as a result, the rewards come for it. Okay, and if a person washes their hands and is still not being successful, go look and see what your other problems are. Right, let's go have a little investigation. Okay, let's see if we can finish up this Siman today. So you wash after you wash your hands, you say a bracha like in front of every other mitzvos. Okay, so you wash your hands, has to be done right after the performance of it. So we don't say the blessing until after we've washed our hands. The travel cups are a revius. It has to be then filled twice. Yeah, you would have to. I think the travel cups are actually bigger than a revius. Aren't they 8 ounces, or are they only 4 ounces? I'll have to look and see. It's a good question. I'm not sure. I think I've seen them. They're about yay big. They should be a full revius. So you have to do ding ding and then fill it up again and ding ding on the other side. That's what he's saying. Okay. One second, I lost my place over here. Let's start this over. Okay. The blessing on washing your hands has to be done right at the commencement of the act itself. Our custom is to say the bracha after the washing itself, because sometimes the hands are not clean at all, and therefore we want to make sure we wash the hands after they've been scrubbed clean, because then your hands are clearly clean. Okay, and then pour other water on them afterwards. The Ramah says that one should also try to make the blessing on them before you've dried them, because drying the hands is part of the mitzvah, and that's considered before you complete the action. Okay, and then if you forgot to say the bracha until after you're drying it, then say it right after you dry it. So Mishna Berurah explains that the order of the blessing for washing your hands is different than blessings that you make over food that you eat, because the blessing is done immediately before you benefit from it. So you can't do it any other way. And that's what we were talking about in that's what we'll be talking about in the next sif. Okay. In this sif. This must be a footnote. This must be a note error. It says kuf nun ches. We are in kuf nun ches. So I mean, you must be in kuf ayin ches. However, if you can eat a little bit before you make the blessing of hamotzi, then you could go ahead and eat something. Okay, so that means you eat the hamotzi first and then do that. So that's the other thing. Okay. So I'm not sure what he's trying to add over here. Let me see if I didn't read that correctly. Okay, right. So you go straight to the hamotzi right after this is what he's saying. Okay, let's look at Sif Yud Beis. Okay, 12. Okay, dry your hands well before you break the bread, because someone who breaks the bread without dry hands is like eating tamei bread. Why? Because the water itself comes in contact with the first water that you poured over your hands, and then the second water will get affected by the first water, and that's in Kuf Samach Beis when we're talking more about the washing the hands in more detail. Because if you pour a second glass of water over the first to clean off your hands, nonetheless you're supposed to take all of it away. That's why you pour. So the first set of water really cleans the dirt off the hands. The second set cleans the tumah of the water off the hands. And so that's why you should have your hands dry before touching the bread. The Marshal says that drying your hands is actually a cleanliness thing, because if your hands are still wet from drying them, it's also because it's gross. And he quotes Rashi on page 4 of Sota for saying that. The Magen Avraham says, I've skipped his whole name. The Magen Avraham says, in quoting the Chuvas of the Tash Bates, that you shouldn't dry your hands on your pants or on your shirt, because that makes you forget Torah learning. Okay? So the Mipur Meganim is like, I don't know if that just means like your undershirt or your top shirt or every shirt. Just don't dry your hands on your body. Okay, let's finish up this halacha today. So we say over here that someone who dunks their hands, meaning you dunk them in the mikvah, you can then eat bread without drying them. And so too, if you wash your hands in one fell swoop, and you pour a ton of water that's more than a revius over them at one time, okay? And then if you also go ahead and wash one hand, so you wash the one hand, and then pour the full revius over it, and so too on the other side. Okay? So that is part of, that's part of what we're saying is a difference in drying your hands off. So meaning that that just when we said previously that you shouldn't eat with wet hands, that's limited in this case. We're limiting it by saying that if the hands are dry, if the hands have been dunked in the mikvah and they're not dry, then that's okay because it went into a mikvah. Okay, and the reason why is because there's a Tosefta that says this. So the Tosefta gives an exclusion. If you dunk your hands in the mikvah, there's no tumah in there anymore. Okay, and that's what the Beis Yosef brings out as well. And therefore, you don't have to dry your hands. And we also see that if you pour a full revius over your hand, right, that 1.5 eggs of water, all in one shot on both of your hands, okay, or on each hand one at a time, that we say that the water is completely not tummy anymore, and you don't have to dry them off. However, we mentioned the Rashal earlier, and he says that drying off your hands is required because it's gross to have wet hands. And so it doesn't matter how much water you're pouring over, it doesn't matter if you stick your hands in a mikvah, it's still something that you need to take care of, which is the drying of the hands, okay? So even though you may not necessarily need it because of the tumah, you'll need it because of the grossness of it, okay? So that's also reiterated by the Bach and other Achronim. Now the Magen Avraham adds that even though by dunking your hands in a mikvah, you don't need to dry them, So he says as well that this may also apply for that case as well. Okay, so we finished this siman. Thank you for joining. We'll pick up next week with 159. We'll talk about what kli to use to wash your hands, because we talked about washing the hands, didn't say how to wash them so much. Just say you need to revius, didn't say how we were delivering it. Do you spit it out of your mouth? Do you flip it do you flip it like a hacky sack from the water, from the ground? Nope, we're gonna see you need to get it from a kli. So we'll be talking more about that next time. Thank you for joining.